The best way to start this video is laying out the criteria straight away, and this is taking on all the feedback from the previous videos I've done in this series. So this is aimed at fresh Wrath of the Lich King servers, but most of it will be useful for existing servers as well, but fresh ultimately is the aim. So due to it being fresh, some of the big patterns and recipes from tier 5 up to Sunwell will be unlikely to come by very quickly, so they're excluded. But if you can get them on existing servers, obviously fill your boots. Without knowing if Season 3 and Season 4 gear will go to Honor in the pre-patch, they're being left out. But if they're available, just switch out some of the gear for PvP gear. But if you don't enjoy farming Honor, stick to the list. The other thing around PvP is the ability to obtain arena points. Doing research, I've seen that in some expansions where the gear hasn't changed to a lower currency, the ladder is frozen but the points are obtainable. Knowing Classic though, that won't be the case. No gear listed will come from raids because with only a short space of time, aiming for loads of raid gear would be unrealistic. Instead, what this gear setup will serve as is a baseline set of gear, and any raid drops or PvP items you get should replace any of these slots. We also won't focus too much effort on slots that will be very quickly replaced in Borean Tundra or Howling Ford, and these pieces will be spoken about on an item by item basis. Whilst decking out your character in loads and loads of Badger Justice gear will yield probably the best stats for your character, it also can be quite difficult or stressful to farm the amount of badges that you'll need each week. It won't be as difficult on fresh servers because I'd imagine heroics and raids are going to be being farmed like never before, but on existing servers trying to get people to do heroics is probably going to be a bit of a challenge. With all that being said, let's have a look at the gear. So as a Holy Paladin, you're actually going to have a really easy time. Quite a lot of your gear comes from places like Magistus Terrace Heroic, so whilst we're excluding raid gear, obviously, we'll put in 5-man heroics because you can do them every single day, and odds are over the course of the pre-patch, you're going to get everything you want if you're aiming for those items in these specific heroics. But it's not too bad at all. You're probably thinking, who's bothered about getting holy gear? Well, with dual spec, you might, if you're just starting, you might be focusing more on your rec gear or your proc gear or whatever, but you might get dual spec during the pre-patch and want to get a full healing gear just there in your bank, ready to heal things like Utgard Keep or the Nexus or whatever, but you also don't want to invest massive amounts of time into getting all that gear. So this is quite an easily achievable list, I would say. So for the head, if you're engineering, you're just going to want to get your Justice Bringer 2000 specs. Decent amount of stamina, not that much intellect to be fair, but you get your meta socket, crit and spell power. These are perfect just as a starting headpiece. If you get any replacements like your tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 head, obviously like I say, any upgrades you get from this, replace, but we're excluding all raid gear for this. This is what we're actually going to equip because I would imagine there's going to be a lot of engineer paladins. But if you're not, you could get something as simple as Incanter's Cowl. It's got Spirit on, which is not overly useful, but it is just from Mechanar. You could even get Hood of Oblivion. You basically just want anything with a meta socket, let's face it. But ideally, you'd be engineering and get the engineering goggles. But as I say, because I don't know if you are engineering or not, we're just going to put in Hood of Oblivion with spell power, stamina, intellect, and you're going to get your meta socket from this. It is cloth, but we don't care. And just as a side note, if any of you are wondering like why we wouldn't go for the badge head or something like that, even if you look at the badge head, it's got less spell power, less intellect. Mana per 5, not going to be overly important. Same if we went for actually the cloth version. It's got crit, which we would have liked, don't get me wrong, but it's got less intellect and less spell power. So Hood of Oblivion is actually very nice, just to say it comes from Arcatraz. So that's what we'll go for. Now for the neck, there is a couple that you're going to get very quickly when you actually get into Northrend. So from doing Disarmament in Utgard Keep, which is just one of the first quests, it's got some spell power, haste, intellect, got a bit of spirit on as well. There's even one from Call to Arms, which is just a quest. There's even just a world drop, but you've got quite a lot of options early on for necks. So I wouldn't worry too much, and all I would grab is the Guardian's Pendant of Conquest. It's only 16,000 on it. That shouldn't take you too long to farm at all, and let's be fair, it's actually very nice. You can put intellect in that gem socket, and it's got crit and spell power. But as I say, if you can't be bothered to farm the Honor, don't worry too much. Just go and grab even Talk of the Sephek Prophet, which is just from a Sephek Hall's quest with crit and spell power and a decent amount of intellect, and just wait until you get into Northrend. But for this, because it's not going to be that difficult to farm 16,000 Honor, this is the item we're going to put in. For shoulders, again, you can get a decent pair of cloth shoulders very early from a quest just in the Nexus, so we're not going to worry too much, but you have got access to a very, very good pair of shoulders very easily as well. So from Magistus Terrace Heroic, which you'll be running every day, they are cloth shoulders, but with intellect, stamina, crit, spell power, and 2 sockets for even more intellect. These are actually very, very nice. Yes, you might have to fight off the cloth wearers, but ultimately it is a very nice Holy Paladin item. And that's what we're going to go for, because you're going to be wanting even more from Magistus Terrace, as you'll find out as we go through. And when it comes to cloaks, don't worry too much because you have got an option as soon as you get into the Nexus, so you'll do this probably at level 70 anyway. All I would go for is the Honor Cloak. So 21,000 honor, again, that won't take you too long. Spell power, crit, haste, stamina is a very, very nice cloak. This is going to be the one that we're going to go for, but if you don't want to go for the honor, you could just pick up the 25 Badge of Justice, which has got crit and spell power on, and as I say, it's only 25, so that's not too bad at all, and ultimately it's going to be replaced very quickly as soon as you get into Northrend anyway. But for this, we're going to assume you don't mind farming some honor, and we're going to go for the honor back. For the chest, you've got lots of options, and you could invest 100 badges, for example, but it's a lot of badges for not a lot of upgrade. So we're actually going to go for the Scarlet Cinderai robes, which is just from KT in Magister's Terrace Heroic. Again, so you're going to want the shoulders and the chest. So you're going to be running Magister's Terrace Heroic every day, getting a few badges and trying to get both of these pieces. But with stamina, intellect, crit, and spell power, 3 sockets for more intellect is actually really, really nice. Again, you're just going to have to swat away those pesky casters. For the wrists, plain and simple, 13,000 honor. I know it looks like we're building up the amount of honor we're going to try and get, but you don't need to get any more items after this, so it is only neck, cape, and wrists we're going to go for. But if you don't want to go for those, you've got 35 Badge of Justice option with spell power and crit and a yellow socket. They are very nice for 35, don't get me wrong. So really, it's down to you. Do you want to farm more honor, or do you want to farm more heroics? I'd say the most painless way would be farming honor, if I'm honest, so that's what we're going to go for. As I said at the start, as we don't know what's going to go on, whether these are going to become available for honor or not, we're going to brush over the Season 4 weapons and go straight for the 150 Badge of Justice weapon, but we aren't going for this. This is absolutely an option, and if you're going to spam loads of heroics and clear all raids very quickly to get maximum amount of badges a week, then absolutely you could get this. But because I'm trying to make these lists as friendly as possible, we're just going to go for Cudgel of Consecration. Yes, it's got hit on, but it's got a nice amount of intellect, a nice amount of spell power, and again, it only comes from Magister's Terrace Heroic, and you're going to be going in there trying to get so many different items that it just makes sense. And it's 203 spell power versus 247. There's really not that much difference. Not enough difference to warrant farming 150 badges. For the offhand, really, the best way to go would be the badges, though. You can get a BOE in Northrend, which only requires level 69, and that'll be available, well, as soon as someone on your server loots one, I suppose. But you might get lucky and loot it yourself. So you might get that. But to tide you over until you get that, the best thing to do would just be to get the 35 badge, offhand or shield, whatever you prefer to use. If you'd rather have a shield, go for the shield. The offhand gives more spell power, more haste, and the same amount of intellect, but I'm just going to put the shield in. It's entirely up to you what you use, but if I was actually going to level as holy, I would rather a shield equipped anyway, just to try and compensate a little bit for all of the cloth that we're wearing. Now, in Magister's Terrace Normal, there is a couple of items that we can get, and one of those is the gloves, so Gauntlets of Divine Blessings. With 2 sockets, stamina, intellect, haste, spell power, they're actually very nice, and it will save you a big chunk of badges. Because what my primary option would be the 60 Badge of Justice gloves, but it is another 60 Badge of Justice. These have got 2 sockets and 40 spell power versus 2 sockets and 29 spell power. Again, there's not a massive amount of difference. Is it worth 60 badges to actually go and get the slightly better gloves? Or do you just continue to farm Magister's Terrace to get something that's going to be absolutely fine until you either get the Gauntlets of the Cheerful Half, which is just a BOE world drop in Northrend, or even the Time-Twisted Wraps from your first Nexus run? I would personally say Gauntlets of Divine Blessings is the best way to go, but again, if you get something better or you've got excess badges, by all means, go for the badge gloves, or even if you're on an existing server, get some better gloves crafted. But as I say, on Fresh, we're probably not going to have that luxury. The waste again comes down to your preference. Do you want to farm Badges of Justice, or do you want to farm Honor? Me personally, I would go for the Honor, because again, I find it's probably going to be the easiest option. But you are going to be doing Magister's Terrace Heroic a lot, so you are going to naturally get a lot of badges, and you'll be doing Kara and ZA, and probably replacing some of these items with those that you're going to get in the raid anyway. Now, it's your choice between a 60 badge level waist, which has got 2 sockets, 40 spell power, crit and mana per 5, or the 75 plate belt, which has got 39 spell power, 28 crit, and 1 blue socket. So actually, the leather belt is probably going to work out better for you. You've just got another socket to put extra intellect in. So we'll go with that. For the legs, it's actually a very, very easy option. We are just going to go for the badge legs. Now, the 100 badge legs will show up here as being slightly better, and that's because it's a higher item level with 141. It's only got 2 sockets and 33 intellect. If we look at the 75 legs, it's got 37 intellect and 3 sockets. So you're going to get more intellect and more intellect for an extra socket as well, getting 3 sockets instead of 2, and you're only losing a little bit of spell power, being 7. So high Justicar's leg plates would be my preference, just to get as much intellect as physically possible. And that's 75 badges. For the feet, from a quest in Nexus, you're going to get a pair of boots very, very quickly, and they are plate. So you don't need to worry too much about boots. Ideally, you're going to want to either get the Badge of Justice boots or the Honour boots, but there are Greaves of the Penitent Knight from Magister's Terrace Heroic with spell power and mana per 5. Yes, they're not as good as the PvP boots or even the Badge of Justice boots, but we go into Magister's Terrace trying to get so many items, we might as well just go for these boots because, as I say, ultimately you're going to get a half decent pair from the Nexus as soon as you go and do your first quest run. So we'll go for the Magister's Terrace Heroic boots. So now that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items from Magister's Terrace. One of them on normal, the rest on heroic, but we are going to want another normal item soon. For the rings, again, you're going to get rings pretty quickly when you get into Northrend, because if you do the Borean Tundra quest, the Assassination of Harold Lane, you're going to get a half decent ring fairly quickly, and this is only probably about the 5th or 6th quest hub that you'll actually go to if you start in Borean Tundra. And then if you go and do your Utgard Keep quest, you're also going to get Signet of Swift Judgment, so you can essentially get 2 really decent rings, more or less, before you even hit 71. So we're not going to fixate too much on getting really good rings. We're just going to settle for something that will carry us through. So I would go for the 16,000 Honour ring, which has got stamina, intellect, spell power, and MP5. And then I would go for Karma's Ring of Fate, which has got haste, spell power, a red socket, stamina, and intellect. So this is just from Magister's Terrace normal. And the reason I'd go for this is because we're going for the gloves, which just come from normal. At least you're going for 2 items, so you've got a chance at getting the gloves and the ring. So just farm normal just to get some rep, because you might be alchemy or something like that. You might be a profession where you're going to benefit from getting to Exalted, for example, or you might be dual crafting and you definitely want to get to Revered, and we'll talk about why you want to get Revered soon. But trying to limit this to just doing, farming Magister's Terrace until you get those 2 items, just farming it on normal, then farming it on heroic every day. You're going to get a lot of gear. It's actually quite easy. That's why I said you're going to have an easy ride. So that was a bit of a spoiler when I said about getting reputation, because actually when it comes to trinkets, getting figurine Crimson Serpent will be really, really good. So if you're dual crafting, you're going to need to get to Revered to be able to get the recipe. So you need to get Revered with Shattered Sun Offensive. So actually doing all this Magister's Terrace is going to benefit you. And I want to go out on a limb and say the vast majority of Holy Paladins that are serious Holy Paladins will be dual crafting. So I'm actually putting this one in where I didn't want to put any profession items in at all. But I really do think the vast majority of Holy Paladins will be dual crafting. Now, I know if you're not going dual crafting, you're going to type angrily in the comments. But again, like this trinket is really, really good, you're going to get the intellect trinket at level 80, that you'll be using at level 80, and you'll probably be using it all the way through Ulduar. It is really, really good. So the vast majority of really hardcore Holy Paladins, well, not even hardcore, but who just want to get the most out of their class, will be dual crafting. And I'd recommend, if you're watching this going into Wrath of the Lich King as a Holy Paladin, to make sure you're JC. Don't worry about engineering if you don't want to be engineering, but JC should be a must. So we're going to go with figurine after all of our farming in Magister's Terrace. We might as well. And now for the second trinket, it really doesn't matter. Just getting Essence of the Martyr for 41 Badge of Justice, you could absolutely do that. You could just grab a Lower City prayer book if you've got Revered with Lower City. You could get Scarab of Infinite Cycle from BM. I really don't think the second trinket is going to make that much difference to the point where you're going to need to farm, 36,000 honor for that extra 70 spell power. Don't get me wrong, if you've got time and you want to do it, you absolutely should, and that would probably be the one that I would go for. It'd be the one that I pair with the JC trinket. Or if you was JC Alchemy, you could go for the Alchemist Stone. But I think ultimately, as long as you've got your JC trinket, you're alright. So just get any other trinket that you can without wasting too much time. So for that reason, honestly, I'm just going to bang in Scarab of the Infinite Cycle, because doing a few BM runs to get this, it shouldn't be too bad. And it's not that bad of a trinket. 37 spell power and a chance to increase your spell haste as well. So casting those big holy lights, it's actually a very nice proc. But when it comes to that second trinket, honestly, use whatever you want. If you want to go for one of the PvP trinkets, do it. If you're Alchemist, get the Alchemist Stone. If you want to get another 41 Badges of Justice, absolutely, go for it. Get it. But I'm trying to keep the amount of badges you need to a minimum, because this is actually quite a comfortable amount that you're going to need to farm. When it comes to your Libram, if you want to spend the 20, because it is cheap to get the Libram of Mending, it's not that bad. I mean, I don't like it really. I mean, MP5 isn't that great, but it is 28 mana per 5 pretty much all the time. But I'll be honest, I would probably be tempted to try and just do a few Botanica runs to get Libram of the Lightbringer, just to increase the spell power of Holy Light by 47. If you're having mana issues, grab Libram of Mending. I mean, for the sake of 20 Badges of Justice, you might as well get it anyway and use it, and then maybe try and get Libram of the Lightbringer. But ultimately, I would rather use Libram of the Lightbringer over Libram of Mending, because you really shouldn't have mana issues to the point where you need that extra mana per 5. You might as well just have a tiny little bit more healing on your Holy Light. And that's it. That's what our Paladin would look like. Going into Wrath of the Lich King wearing a dress, but, needs must. And that's it. Be sure to like, subscribe. I'm not going to drag this out. This is what your Holy Paladin should have as a baseline set. As I say, this is not like full BIS going into Wrath. This is a realistic amount of gear that you can acquire in the pre-patch, in that short space of time, so you've at least got something that you can take into Wrath and be able to heal dungeons on. Any upgrades you get in raids, put them on. That's it. Any upgrades you get from PvP, put them on. But just treat this as, if everything fails and I don't get any loot in raids during the pre-patch, or I can't be bothered to farm honor, get these items instead. Thanks for watching. Roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes, everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name, and you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.